Guys, we had a great first episode. Thank you very much. A lot more to get to here. We all, in our own way, covered Damar Hamlin. It's been the, really, I'd say, national sports story over the last 6 months that people have talked a lot about. Every time I go on a show, people ask me. You, Josh Reed, have probably covered two of the bigger sports stories of our lifetime. You covered Joe Paterno at Penn State.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, that's part of the problem is what you just said. Jerry Sandusky was the issue.
That's right.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Joe Paterno was part of the problem, but it became the Joe Paterno saga, and it was Jerry Sandusky. But Joe Paterno has got his name on the front door, right? So he's the guy. Yeah, and that was 2011, man. It was crazy. I have never, like you said, I mean, covering Hamlin and that, it's not often. We get into sports so that we don't have to do news, right? I mean, especially from a TV side of things, John, right? Like when we're in college, you at Dayton and me at Kent State, it was like, okay, hey, here's the journalism classes you can take. Do you want to do news? Because you should probably do news because that's really the only future. You don't want to do sports because you're never going to make it. And it's like, no, I don't want to do news. I can't knock on doors and ask families how they feel about a relative dying. I don't want to do that. And then all of a sudden, something like that happens, the Hamlin and the Sandusky and Paterno stuff at Penn State, and you have to put on a hat that you're not used to wearing. And it becomes really uncomfortable at times, but you find it and navigate your way through it. It was really hard now. The Hamlin stuff, obviously, we're outside the hospital, so things are happening pretty quickly and then slowly as time goes on because we're getting information kind of leaked out slowly. But the Penn State stuff.
Well, and can I say the difference is with Hamlin, while it was such a tragic event to start, it started to get better as it went on.
Yes,
That was the opposite.
100%. Oh, the Sandusky stuff was, and I mean, I was stationed up at Penn State. I'll never forget getting the phone call, and my 12-year-old son now was 6 months old, 8 months old at the time, and getting a call and being like, hey, we're going to need, the station calling me and being like, hey, you need to pack a bag. We're sending you up to Penn State. And I said, how long am I going to be there? And they were like, we're booking you a hotel room right now. Things are going sideways in State College. And I was like, holy cow, what am I even going into? And they were like, we're sending a camera person to meet you up there. And I get there and the campus is just, you could feel the tension. It was like nothing I've ever been around. And then I don't want to go too, like I could sit here and talk about it for 40 minutes, but long story short, they call a board of directors meeting and everybody comes together and then Joe Paterno says, I'm going to step down. And then the board says, no, you're fired. And the next thing you know, the students are flipping TV trucks on their sides. I mean, it was like not like to the point where, look, I'm pretty new and, so I'm kind of, I'm like mid-20s, late 20s. I'm like, yeah, I'm tough. I'll stand out here with these kids. Let them come toe-to-toe. There were times though when I was like, this is not good. This is a mob mentality right now. And I mean, they were there. A lot of them were there for the right reasons, but a lot of them were there because they were college students. They decided this was a reason to protest, and it's not just Paterno, Sandusky. We've seen this throughout time, right? If there's a time to protest, college kids are going to do it, and sometimes it goes sideways, and it did. But I will never forget Joe getting fired and being out like on his lawn. He comes out with Sue and, does the whole, tries to tell the students to keep their calm and, things will be okay. And it was just really eerie. And then he passes away months later. It was a crazy thing to cover.
What I can imagine in UFC, you've kind of covered some interesting, crazy stuff that's gone on. Things that might have come to mind. Give me one.
One of my first, I think it was like a couple months into the job, definitely under 6 months. was the John Jones Daniel Cormier first face-off before they fought in MSG, when it like exploded into this melee. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it was the first time they were going to fight. Daniel Cormier was undefeated. John Jones was on his way to being the greatest of all time. And they were going back and forth and started talking trash. They both came from a wrestling background. And on the stage at MSG, they had a PR guy. Shout out Dave Schaller, one of my favorites. He works for the Philadelphia Sixers now. Small, 5'8", white dude, in between just two heavyweights, light heavyweights, that were just wanting to kill each other. And he's just standing in the middle of it and like just knew what was happening. And they went to push each other, and Cormier pushed him, and then John Jones came over the top and punched him. And they fall off the stage, and I'm like, whoa, like this is different, man. Like I was like really kind of coming to my own understanding of the sport before I went out there. But then seeing the way that kind of all transpired, obviously I was at the press conference when Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz were throwing the water bottles back and forth like with each other. So like it was always craziness. But it's funny you mentioned the stuff about covering the Paterno situation and obviously Damar Hamlin. Like we do get into this to do sports, and you're reminded of that when these kind of serious things kind of pop up. Like I remember being outside the hospital with you and talking to Damar's uncle and Dorian, and at the time I'm sitting there thinking like the whole world is waiting on this update. Like he's still like in a coma, like we don't know if he's going to come out of it. And it's like you think about that, like it's almost like this moment of like you hover over your body and you kind of realize like, okay, this is really important stuff. This isn't like...
This is journalism.
This is journalism.
Right?
Like, this isn't like, hey, like Josh Allen threw 2 picks. I got to really scorch him on the podcast after the game. This is like life or death. Like the world's waiting. I mean, I did CNN the next day. Like I've done it. Yeah, sorry about that. But no, I mean, it was, by the way, like we always like act like we're like cool, right? Like we're cool, calm, cool and collected doing this. I was pissing my pants. You know what I mean? They're like, we're 5 minutes down. And I'm like, because you don't know the direction. Like, you're not prepared for that. Like, you got to, like, you know, take what you have been reporting on and what you've seen and then bring that to a global audience in, like, 5 minutes. And you better be well-spoken and don't screw it up. And I'm not really a TV guy. Like, I've kind of...
Because that's where we become the conduit, like you talked about earlier.
Right.
Like, that's really the time, John, where... Now we really have an obligation to everyone out there to tell the story the way it needs to be told.
It's interesting because you said we do sports because we didn't want to do news. I lost my first job because of a merger with stations, and the only job I could get back in was in news. So I spent 19 months after being a sports director for 2 years in news, and I worked the overnight shift. The entire existence of the overnight shift is to find breaking news. So this sounds so messed up, but you were looking for your lead for the 5 a.m. newscast, and you don't want it to be the same as the 11. So that means you're not rooting for, but you need a house fire, a robbery, a shooting, a stabbing. And so these are the things that I'm chasing. I'm not chasing this high school football team going for a state championship. No, that was my past. And the thing that sucked so bad is you become so desensitized to it. And I've talked to people that are like EMTs and firefighters as well, police, the same thing, is you just get so used to covering all of this horrific stuff that it doesn't even move the needle for you. But the only time that I will never forget is I covered a homicide, and this disgruntled boyfriend shot and killed the mother of his child with the 3-year-old child in the room. That child is forever scarred. Like,
What do you mean you covered it? What did you have to do?
So I was a photographer. So I was sitting there at the scene getting video of whatever I could find, which included this little boy in a window at like 3-4 years old watching all of this police presence. And then a couple days later, you get the 911 call and he phoned it in. And it's like, my gosh, I don't want to be in this world anymore. And thankfully, I found my way out of news and into sports. And then you're right. I mean, Damar Hamlin was a different situation because while maybe I don't and didn't have as strong a relationship with him as other players in the room, you knew Damar Hamlin. Right. And it was like, this is a guy that we well, we later found out we watched him die, and then he came back to life by the heroic efforts of the medical staff. But that's what you're talking about, life and death in that situation. But there was more of a personal relationship, because even if you weren't as close with DeMar, you know the guys in the room, you know the guys in the locker room, you know Sean, you know everyone in the organization, and you know what they're going through right there. So it was where we like to distance ourselves from a professional standpoint to cover them in an objective manner. I think we all felt the personal side, whether it was individually or just for the other guys and people we knew within the organization, because looking back with the information we know and then seeing the images that we saw of players and people on the field, now you totally understand what they were going through. And it's, thank goodness it came out and has turned the way that it has.
And it's still going, right? We still talk about
Right,
it. And
but
there's always things
but-
happening now we talk about.
But I'm so glad I don't do that on a regular basis in any capacity, because it's some of the most challenging things from a personal standpoint, just to keep your stuff together. I'm sure all of us, when we finally had a downbeat, we were all up throughout the entire night working. When you finally had a downbeat and the exhaustion kind of wore off, that's where it hit me. Like, you talk about crying, I cried.
Yeah.
I
There's
cried.
a human side to it.
Because I'm like, holy smokes, this guy may not live.
Right.
And that's, as you said, it's not football, it's not sports, that's life.
We're all in different stages of our life. I was thinking about this. Now, we're all kind of relatively close in age, but we're all different.
Me
So-
being the youngest.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, Josh, you are expecting your fourth child.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. John has been married for a couple years. No children yet.
No children.
Matt, how long have you been married? You and Caitlin.
Dude.
You better get this right, pal.
Dude, we just celebrated our 13th.
13th. And you have two children who are getting older. Well,
Yes.
they're younger, but they're getting older.
Yep.
Right? We're all in these different stages. How do you balance the work life? And especially now, you have a fourth child. And by the way, 3 of them are going to be, what, 3 and under?
Yeah, we're going to have...
Good work, buddy.
Yeah, right, yeah. Well, I spend the off-season.
I love it.
No, that's a complete, tribute to my wife, who is just a godsend. Like, she's the reason that makes having 3 little kids running around doable. It's challenging. It can be challenging, and I think the number one thing is, I'm sure you guys would agree with this, you got to find somebody who understands
Yes.
what our job is. Like, that is the number one thing. John, you obviously have someone who understands it because she lives it, but like you do. If you don't have someone who understands, like, that some days you have off Monday and Friday, and some weeks you have off Sunday and Tuesday, and some weeks there's no days off, and some days you work mornings and sometimes it's nights, and that juggling it is very tricky. But having the right, I know it's cliche, but having the right person, with you in the room, if you will, is number one. But I'm excited because I know that you guys have experienced already. I'm excited for my 12-year-old. He's a Josh Allen guy. Like, he has the jersey. He's kind of into it and stuff. The 3-year-old is starting to get interested. He's like, Daddy, football, and I'm like, well, and he'll see me now on TV, and he's like, oh, your daddy lives in the TV. And I'm like, well, not really, but it's challenging. You know what? I'm glad you brought this topic up, because something that I've really started to think about in the last maybe 2 years is, how would I feel, and I want to see what you guys think too, how would I feel if this wasn't a thing? That camera's gone, that camera's gone, that microphone's gone. Like, because after 20 years, you just get used to it being such a part of your life. Like, what happened if, tomorrow I wake up and they're like, you know what? Because I love it still, but I've started to find other things that I'm good at, and started to look at other
This is funny you
different
say this,
things.
because I have a question here, and I want to get back to your lives and relationships and being married. But I'm glad you asked this. Question I was going to ask you guys today. How does it end for you in this business? And I don't want to be morbid.
Yeah.
I'm not asking how your life ends.
Yeah.
But are you okay just walking off into the sunset and retiring, playing golf? Or, okay, because I'm going to tell you, I'll answer first. I'll do this until they kick me out.
Oh, you'll do it till the
I-
wheels fall off.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
Like, I will do this until someone literally
Yeah.
drags me away and
Yeah.
says, you can no longer do this. I always say, I'm not getting timed in the 40.
Yeah.
I can do this as long as I can.
I will not. My time is probably coming. To be perfectly
Wow.
honest with you, it's not the passion, it's life. I mean, this industry is hard, and frankly, it sucks. And it's so funny when you're in college. The professors always tell you, mine said, you don't want to do sports, or you don't do news, don't do local news, don't do this. It's like, it's tongue in cheek to some extent, but the number one thing I tell people that are young, that are aspiring to do this, is go into it being fully understanding of the reality. Don't have anything sugar-coated. I'm not going to do that for you. You're going to make crap money. You're going to work in a crap town. You're going to work crap hours. You're going to cover crap things. And that's not changing immediately. And some of those things may never change. You may never make good money in this business. You may never have good hours in this business. I've been fortunate enough to kind of navigate some of those things, but there are still some aspects of it that are just, it's not worth it. And the good thing is, the way the world is expanding, everyone is looking for video things. Everyone is looking for social media. Everyone is looking for a face and someone who can present themselves well. So our skill set, where 10 years ago, you'd have to like be a salesman or go into business, there weren't a lot of opportunities that included what we are so good at on a day-to-day basis, that now there's a lot of them. And I think it's a lot easier, and we've seen people at our publications and stations and things like that easily transition into other things, and their life is just so much better. And I just think that at some point, probably sooner rather than later, unless something changed, I'll probably find my way transitioning to that. And 90% of the people I know that do are exponentially happier.
You know what I dislike the most about what we do?
What?
And this is kind of controversial, and it's not any one person in particular, but like, I don't fit into the box of being like a traditional NFL beat reporter. To be honest with you,
Neither do I.
I don't really like a lot of beat reporters. Like, and this sounds so judgmental, but like, I don't know, like I feel like a lot of people get into this business because they got stuffed into lockers in high school, or they didn't make the football team. Like, I wasn't very like athletically inclined in high school, but that's not why I got into this business. I got into this business because I loved football growing up. Like, I loved the Bills. I loved the connection between the team and the city. And I feel like a lot of people get into it for the wrong reasons, and they become really like miserable. So I guess like my end point will probably come at the point I can't really take it anymore. Like, we go to these like national events, like it's different everywhere. Like, you deal mostly with like TV people probably, right? And that's probably a different temperature. You deal with a lot of radio sideline folks. Like, traditional newspaper beat reporters, like the ones that I've met, like there's always something they're just unhappy about. And like, I don't work well in that environment. Like, I really thrive in a positive environment, and I try to create that not only for myself but those people that I work with and work alongside of. And so that's why I've gotten into teaching over the last couple of years at UB, and why I'm so invested in my son's Little League team. Everybody always says like, oh, like you're just living vicariously through him. It's like, I'm not. It's like, I like spending my time around kids that are experiencing a game for the first time. Like, I don't consider myself a coach. Like, you've coached. Like, I don't consider myself the traditional coach. I'm more of like a fan of watching these kids like learn how to play baseball. Like, I have this one kid. I won't shout him out by name, but like, when he got to my travel tryout at the beginning of the year, like, he struggled hitting, he struggled throwing. Like, I think there's probably some people that were like, is this kid even like a travel player? Like, I don't know if he's going to be able to cut it once we get to the games and everything like that. He finished the season, hit 4 home runs during the year, made the biggest strides everywhere. He's one of our best players at the end of the year. It's like, I don't even know how much of that was me, but watching that was so cool. And like, to your point, like, I almost want to chase that now more than I want to chase anything professionally. People always ask me like, you know, say this in a humble way, like, you do a lot of good things at your job, and people are like, well, what's next? What's the next big thing? Like, do you want to go to ESPN? Do you want to do this? No.
No,
I
me
have
neither.
no desire to do that.
I get asked that a lot. You know what's next for me? Things like this.
Yeah.
So I'll be honest with you. Like that's why this was created, because everyone has a podcast now. Everyone has a video cast. Everyone's doing all this. The market is so saturated with everything we're doing, and I'm always searching for. This is why I said earlier, like you're so good at like this. You've been so good at doing this in these platforms. I'm always thinking, what can I do different to keep myself energized, to keep myself going? Because I don't ever want to get stale. You know what I mean? Like you can get stale in what you're doing, and I think that's kind of the point of why I'm even sitting here with you guys right now. I don't ever want to get that. I agree, though. There are people who are very miserable who are doing this, and I can't ever. I'm like, dude, you get to watch football for a living. Like, what are you mad about, right? So, could you see yourself, if that's becoming more enjoyable, at some point? Okay, so your son Luke is my son's age, Max. Mm-hmm. So, how many more years do they have left for Dad to coach them, right?
Right.
And when that happens and that dries up, like, is that when you'll say, I don't know if well, you have to find something else then?
Right. I think for me, my daughter's starting kindergarten. Like when the two kids, that's what I see my timeline doing what I'm doing currently. When they graduate college or graduate high school and go into college, whatever they end up doing, like I'm almost going to probably chase their lives at that point.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
You're going to go hang out at college.
Yeah.
Hey,
But
old school.
But what will your
sign
hair
me
look
up.
like?
Sign me up. I'd love to join you.
I got to send you a picture of my dad's because I think that's who I'm going to follow. Don't
Like
touch.
that
Don't
design?
touch. Don't touch.
John, you are married to Heather Prusak of Channel 4, WIVB.
That's the
Works
rumor.
in Josh's department. Josh is the sports director. Okay, so what is the dynamic, A, between you and your competitor of a wife, because she is working at a sports station in this market, and B, with your friend Josh Reed, who is the boss of your wife?
I mean, I would say we get this question a lot. We've been together since 2017, married over 2 years at this point. You mentioned it earlier. There's not a whole lot of...
You mentioned about being married. Did it bother you that you didn't wear the best suit at your wedding?
No, I wore a tux.
Okay.
And I looked
No, he was
awesome.
actually. I'm just joking. He was cheering me. I was like, "You wore it."
He wore great. You should have wore that to this.
Lime
but
green.
it's not like, what do we compete a lot? Like,
Right.
to your point, no one's really breaking stories. So, and frankly, I don't really care about that in general, even if it was a lot more attainable. So there's no competition there. And our job responsibilities are a little different. I'm at the Bills every day. She has to anchor and do other things. So I have the ability to do certain things that maybe she doesn't, just from a time perspective. So like very rarely are we competing for
Right.
anything. It's honestly just nice to sometimes be around each other because, as you said, and we all understand, you're not around your family or your wives because of the amount of time we're doing things. And some of those days, like a game day at home, she's sitting 2 seats down from me in the press box. So for 4 or 5 hours where everyone's absent from their family, I'm kind of with them, even though we're in work mode. And with Josh, I mean, that's kind of been the coolest thing is Heather had been in the market for years prior and had built a friendship. We had all built a friendship before she even started at Channel 4. And so I can't and won't speak for her or him in terms of how you go from like being friends to then coworkers and one, and being the boss or whatever. But I think it seems fine and it's cool. And anytime we're all together, you would have no idea that the two of them work together, that he's the boss and of her and sets her schedule. Or like it's never, you never have that vibe. I mean, frankly, I don't think we ever seem to really have that vibe, except for maybe we're all blowing off steam about certain things. But I mean, we're pretty good, I think, collectively at when we're sitting on couch here and don't have the cameras on, we're not going to necessarily sit here and talk about the Buffalo Bills or everything.
Scott Swenson's going to see this and learn about this no boss dynamic and say, "Wait a second! Every time I'm with him, he tells me he's the boss."
Yeah, from the outside looking in at their dynamic, it's I don't know if they ever talk about work, and not ever, but I feel like Heather will have an idea, and I'm thinking, is there any way she mentioned that to John? And then I can almost tell that there's no talk about that kind of stuff, which is good. I'm sure it keeps things healthy. I can't speak for you, but it's you're right. There's a friendship. It's not, the nice thing is it's really easy working with Heather and John and having our relationship the way, our friendship and working together is because she works her ass off and she's good at her job. Well, that makes it pretty easy, right? She's good at it and she works at it. So now if she sucked and she was lazy, that'd be much tougher. But it makes it way
You can
easier.
never work at the same station though, because then you would your schedules, right?
It would be more so of, and we'll just use Channel 4 as an example,
Yes.
just because it's easiest. Like one person would cover the Bills, the other would cover the Sabres, and if we aren't satisfied with both of those roles, or if one of us ends up doing something that the other would rather be doing or whatnot, that would cause some unnecessary friction. And then also,
It's almost better to work at opposite stations.
correct, yeah, so it's better. And I'll just say this, while there is now, because we've been married and together long enough, and we've both been in the market since 2014 around the Bills, there are people that know that we're married, but I would think if you're new, there is no way that you would know
Agreed.
based upon
Agreed. 100%.
based
You're
upon
right.
our interactions
And that's great.
that we are even dating or married or anything like that. Now, like I said, we've been here long enough. Sean gave us the shout out in the press conference when we got engaged. Sean, Brent, the people who've been there for a long time, they know. But by no means do we make it a point, and honestly, I would say maybe not consciously, but we almost maybe go the extra length to make it not apparent.
It's like when you're coaching your own kid, you almost go a little too far to to favor them, right?
Right.
So you almost go, right. I agree with that, no doubt about it. All right, so we talked about how it could end for all of us, what we'd be doing. What would you be doing if you're not in this business? Would you just go back? Would you teach full time? Is that what do you love? What would you do?
Yeah, like probably teaching. I really enjoy that aspect. And when I was at UB and I graduated from there, there wasn't like this network for journalists starting out in the business that you see at other schools. Like Bonaventure has a really good Syracuse. Like a lot of
Ball
those
State has a good one,
schools, that can kind of give you a springboard. I got lucky in that like Mark Gahn on a one-off. I don't even know how I got his number, but he agreed to have a call with me when I was in like a freshman in college. I was on the phone with him for, I'm not kidding, like an hour, asking him all these different questions, and it was huge. It was a huge thing. And then when I came back, I joked with him about it. Like, do you remember that? Like, and he's like, not really, but I'm glad it helped.
There you go.
And I was like, but he took that time for somebody he didn't know. And just like, and we don't really have that because there's no journalism program at UB. So like, yeah, I could probably see myself getting super invested.
What would you be doing if you weren't doing
So I still love telling stories. It's my favorite part. I'm not big into the day-to-day. My favorite thing is I've been fortunate enough to get into a good groove of once a week I do a feature story, sit down with a Bills player. That type of thing, working for a production company and telling stories, or a lot of editing and video work. A guy I went to high school or college with who's in a fraternity, who was in my fraternity, his production group in the Carolinas did the UFC Embedded for years and years and years. And it's all this behind the scenes stuff. We've all talked about the Netflix documentaries and HBO documentaries. I love that stuff. And to do that sort of work and not be bogged down with let me tell the injury report, let me tell you what defense they're going to run. That stuff is not interesting to me. Telling stories is. So in an ideal world, if I could continue to tell stories, but just not on a local news platform, I think that would be perfect and ideal.
That's why I'm doing this, and getting you guys to tell your story. That's
So
what
if
I
you're
appreciate.
here, bring that camera here.
There
So
you
if
go.
you want to hire me here,
It's a good question. My wife is an excellent photographer still. She's traveled the world, done amazing stuff. We would probably travel the world, and
love it.
I would probably do some sort of video, travel blog type stuff, and along with her with her photography, we would probably do something like that where we do like we're planning some big trips coming up, and we talked a little bit about how do families travel with little kids. Like, there's not a lot of that out there. You can find some of it, but specifically, how do you travel as parents with kids that are 3 and 1? And how do you do that? And even, then eventually 7 and 5 and 3. How do you navigate that? What are some tricks of the trade? So we've talked about that, and that's something that other than that, I'd buy houses and I'd renovate them and flip them.
And that's what I was saying before. Our skill set is no longer pigeonholed into traditional media.
You're
Right, that's right.
When we all got into it, it was, well, if you want to do this, if you want to be a writer, if you want to be on radio, if you want to be a host, if you want to be on television, you have to do local news. You have to do local publications. That is not the case. It's so wild to think of that idea. You could get 1 million followers on Instagram and make money.
And
you
YouTube.
make money
You
and
get
YouTube and all of this. And those are platforms
advertisers and-
that you make money without the help of anyone else.
And
You
getting
don't-
paid to travel the world.
Right, and it's crazy. And all of these resorts and these places, they want you
Sure.
because, like we said from the way beginning of, the players don't always feel like they need us. Well, these resorts,
Sure.
that is how they get free advertising, is come here with your children, we'll give you this access, maybe they'll comp you a room or whatever, and you show their resort or whatever on display, and then that goes viral, you get hundreds of thousands of views, and then that people will see that and be like, well, dang, we could do that too. And that's how it all works, and that's the day and age we live in, is we are not put in a box. The options are endless in terms of using our skill set to turn a profit, and it doesn't even have to necessarily be full time. That's the other crazy thing. Like, we joke, we have an Instagram for my dog. We probably, if we put a lot of effort into it, there are plenty of dog accounts out there that make money. I'm sure if we really, really put enough effort into it, Otto could be the breadwinner of the house.
Plug it. What's the Instagram?
Lotto Otto. So it's LOT underscore O underscore Otto, OTTO. We'd probably have to do things and get a tutorial from him on how to do social media a little better. But there's plenty of dog accounts that are tens of thousands of people and followers, and they make money.
You know what will keep me, I think, in this business, though, the more I sit and think about it is
Hanging out with us.
that's a big part of it. I love like, we got a special group in that, like, it's not
We
like
get
this
along.
in every market.
We get along.
Exactly. But I love, like, part of, like, my podcast and these live events that we're doing, like, giving access to fans that they're not used to getting. And that is something I'm really passionate about, because I remember growing up and, like, there's just so many reporters that you just feel like will never give you the time of day. And some people would argue they don't want the interactions with fans, but I thrive off of them, because, like, in a way that helps me do my job, because it prioritizes what I'm going to actually do with my access and in my coverage. And so that part of it, as I continue to grow that piece of our business, like, that's what gets me motivated. That's what gets me, like, excited. Like, you talked about, like, creating the show to take it to the next level. Like, I have all these different ideas that I think are going to take the fan experience for Bills coverage to a different level. And that's what will keep me motivated for a long time, until I realize
When
it.
Does this have anything to do with AI? Are you going to bring some people back? You do some AI. You want to talk about fan experience?
You need to do hair and beard Instagram. You'll do your travel. I'll do the dog. Sal,
Listen, I still want to be a game show host. My
You would be such a good game show.
I want to be a game show host. I want to host unscripted reality TV. That's what I like. I want to be Chris Harrison in The Bachelor. When I was a kid, I wanted to host, like, Press Your Luck and The Price is Right. I wanted to host that. Even now today, I want to host a game show. I want to read the questions, and that's what I want to do.
maybe Billy Bible Bong.
I know. So if anybody out there,
You got
wants
to get a network executive to come out to the Eric Wood golf tournament. Watch you MC that bad boy.
There you go. I've been doing a lot of MCing. Whatever I do in my life, I've just realized, and look, I think it's in our blood, right? My dad was a singer. That's what he did, right? He was a musician. He did stuff like that. I think it's just in my blood to be on stage and be in front of a camera. That's just what it is. And I feel comfortable being that person who does that. I don't like to be behind the scenes. And I think that comes into when people talk about ego or whatever. I don't know. We're all just different, and that's what I'm passionate about. I like being the person who's out front, so I don't mind that. Let's bring it back to a little bit of football. where's the best environment you guys have been in the NFL, or even beyond? Because I know Penn State probably for you. Like,
Yeah,
that was
there was
great,
yeah.
right?
Penn State whiteout games were pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
Covered the Rose Bowl,
Okay.
which is covered the Super Bowl. I covered the Ravens Niners Super Bowl, the Harbaugh Bowl. So those off the top of my head, those were pretty ridiculous.
What stadiums or environments stand out
I
to you?
mean, Ohio State, the
Yes.
Horseshoe, 105, 106,000. I covered a Michigan-Ohio State game in the Big House as well.
Never gone to one.
And to be on the field for those and looking up, especially
The ground moves, right?
It's
You
crazy.
can feel the ground move.
Pirates Reds wild card game in like 2013. The Pirates hadn't made the playoffs, I think, in like 25 years, and Johnny Cueto was pitching, and they were chanting Cueto, Cueto, and he dropped the ball before he threw a pitch, and the place erupted. And on the next pitch was a home run by the Pirates, and the press box, which is the very top of PNC Park, the greatest baseball park in all of MLB, was shaking. I mean, it was shaking because the place was so electric. And I have no ties to the Pirates. And
That's awesome.
And I'm just sitting
feel
there
that.
thinking, this is unbelievable. And the one thing, I'll say this, Naheem Hines returning that kickback,
Ah.
it just shot chills through my body.
Yeah.
And that's with having the glass. You obviously had a different experience in the sidelines, but having the glass, it deafens, it takes it back a little
Yes.
bit, but you could even feel it, at least I could, through the glass of just the energy of that building.
I was
with
down there. I mean,
Hines taking
people
it.
were literally crying on the sidelines. It was pretty amazing. Where are you looking forward to going this year? Anywhere special you'd like to go?
I'm actually looking forward to Philly because I've never been to an
Okay.
Eagles game.
You'll like that.
But I want to throw out two.
Okay.
For like one under the radar. Minnesota,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's a great city.
open air press box, which I think is a huge like plus experience. Is New Orleans open air too?
Yeah.
Yes, and it's cold.
Yes.
It's super cold. Like they have the air blowing on you, right? Even though
And-
I'm on the sidelines, I
And
was
it
up
has
there.
the worst Thanksgiving dinner ever.
Yeah, that was
Yes, that's
horrible.
right.
But both of them, right leading up, like that was 5 minutes before kickoff. Like, dude, that gets you buzzing.
Oh, the
Like,
Skull chant was
yes,
unreal.
That
The
was
Skull chant was
unreal. That
crazy.
was one of the coolest environments I've been.
That's awesome.
But I will tell you, the coolest moment of my entire career, MSG, UFC 205. Conor McGregor was coming to try to win the double championship. That means he won the 145 and he was trying to win the 155. He had talked all this crap. He was an underdog. Nobody believed he was going to win it. He's going up against Eddie Alvarez, who's kind of like a wrestler. And so he was an underdog. And that was supposed to be his not going to be able to do it. And the place when he came out, they believe they had if they didn't have the live band playing him out, I think that might have been 189. Sinead O'Connor actually came in and had him come out. But just a feeling in there because MMA was illegal in New York for years. So they had to like try to fight politically to get this thing. And after 200 live events, pay-per-views, they finally legalized it. And their first event was Conor in there for the double championship. It all crescendoed to this huge night. And then he knocked him out in the second round. And it was unlike anything. Like, I don't even know if I worked that night. Like, it was
Right.
like, it was so crazy. Like, I don't remember the story I wrote. I was in that moment. Like, I'll never forget it. Like, I've never been in a place that was louder. And of course, I was octagon side, so that was part of how cool it was. But like, it was sweet.
Let me throw you guys one that, even though it was a quarter-filled stadium, Ravens, Bills, Taron Johnson's pick six.
Yeah.
I mean, people talk about something moving in slow motion, and I've never really experienced that. I experienced it, that moment. So I wasn't able to be on the sidelines. We had to be in what they call the, not the bay, whatever they call that
It
little.
was like the fifth row of the stand.
Yeah, right. You had to be down there, right? I had to be down. But what was cool is I got to actually move around the stadium if I wanted to get a different vantage point. It wasn't on the, actual sidelines. So I'm standing in the corner of the end zone. I see the interception. He starts running down the field, and I'm running kind of with him because there's nobody in my row. So I'm literally running down the row instead of the sidelines. And as I'm doing it, I still get chills thinking it. It was literally, I could see fans in slow motion almost going crazy and him and guys on the sidelines. And it just got me chills. And that stadium wasn't even, it was a quarter filled.
right.
It was unbelievable
Yeah.
to be in an environment like that. to bring it back to things we've talked about, that's what makes this job so rewarding.
I got
right?
one last one for you.
Yeah.
'06, I think it was. I'm terrible at dates. You're so good at dates. I'm very envious of that. I think it was '06. Phillies, Dodgers, NLCS. Phillies win the NLCS. I'm at the game covering it because I'm working in Harrisburg. And I was in the clubhouse, and I have pictures still on my phone of Chase Utley standing there, and he's just spraying champagne everywhere. You can barely see the pictures, and they've got the goggles
Yes.
on, and I'm in the clubhouse. I'm like, this is incredible. To your point, like, I don't remember any of the reports I did that night. I'm like, and I'm not even like, it's not like I grew up a Phillies fan or anything. It was just one of those moments where I'm like, this is incredible. Like, this is unbelievable. Jamie Moyer was like the star of the series, and that was a lot of fun.
So you guys came into Sal's house, and we thought about like all the different things that go on and how challenging, and then we get to the end and we think about how great this
All
is,
the good
right?
stuff.
What we do, right?
Yeah.
What we do. I honestly, like I do this. It's my 10th year on the sidelines. It's a true story. Ever since game one. Game one was Fred Jackson overtime in Chicago, stiff arm Chris Conti. That was my game one on the road. I had done the couple preseason games at home before that. And every single game, if you watch me, anybody watching out there, I will stand on the sidelines during the national anthem, and I literally do a 360. And I look at everybody around me, and I go, holy cow, I'm in the NFL. I try to do that every game, just to remind myself where we are, what we've done. That said, we started all of this 2 episodes ago, and thank you all for doing this. Talking about relationships, your relationship with sports. You brought it up. We have a good group. Let's talk about relationships with each other. Let's talk about relationships in this business. There's been a lot made about that lately, right? I mean, there was an article written, you can't be friends with each other in this business, whatever. That's a bunch of baloney. But you do have to navigate relationships in the media room or in your newsroom or in your sports department or whatever. I would say that we're all friends. It doesn't mean that we don't have challenges, right, along the way. So how have you I'll start with you, Matt. Like, what is your way of going about relationships in this industry? Competitors, friends, hanging out, golfing with each other, people maybe you don't even see eye to eye with.
Yeah, I first and foremost try to, and I mean, you guys can mention if I do a good job of it, I try to treat everybody with respect. I think that's like, except him, because look at him. He comes in here into your house, he wears his hat backwards.
It's Ben Griffey Jr., baby.
I mean,
I
I
love
do
it.
like the garb, but I think that's important. Like, I think that when you have situations that pop up, like interpersonal, like in media, it's mostly like for a lack of respect in some way.
Yeah.
So I try to do that, and not to mention the fact I've tried to get to know everybody. Like, if you come to this market, when I was just getting to the market, like, I try to get to know everybody. Like, TV, radio, print, digital, I don't care what you do. Like, I want to get to know you. I want to see what we have in common, and then, you know, we're around each other in season sometimes more than we're around our family. So, like, what sense does it make to be, like, miserable and not, like, embrace those things? And, yeah.
We will, though, have times where we do this because we're like family, right? I mean, that's what happens sometimes. Whether it's, something happens off the, fantasy football trade or something like that, or whatever would happen. I don't know, John. How do you try to navigate that space? Because it's not always easy sometimes.
I think the core, these group of people. I mean, I can't honestly remember really when we've had issues or anything
Right.
like that. It's more of just people who are not in the group, and there's a reason. Like, we may be all welcoming, but there's a reason I'm not going to necessarily go out to dinner with every single person or want to or anything like that.
And that's okay.
Right. There's nothing. That's life.
Right.
I think anyone thinking otherwise is living in a fantasy world. And to me, it's more of, is it worth it for me to get into it with this person, or can I just let them be them, get my work done, and be gone with it? Because it's just a normal relationship thing of, is there anything I could tell you that is going to change? No, it's not going to change it. So there's people in there that have been doing this for a long time or haven't been doing it a long time, and they're just going to be who they're going to be. And it's really not worth my time or energy to deal with it, because let's be real, I really don't have to most of the time. So I don't, and I learned early in my career, it is a small industry, and whether or not you're looking to move on or you're not, your reputation will always be there with a bunch of people. And 100% not everyone's going to like you, and who cares, to be honest with you. But there needs to be there. I had a guy in my first job who got hired to ultimately be my boss, who you talk about going at it. And this is when I'm like 23, 24, so I'm really not going to let you tell me what to do. He ended up getting fired. Lo and behold, 8 years later, he tries working here in Buffalo. And I told my bosses about them and the relationship I had, and he was right on the verge of getting hired. They pulled his offer and didn't hire him. And
Got him.
got him, as Dion would say. And it's like, listen, that's
Poor
how,
guy's living with his kids and his wife in a car now,
Right.
but
that's how I decided to handle it. Like, you know, and there's plenty of other people where through a person, and this is just life, but in our industry, yeah, people are going to know people, they're going to talk to people, and social media, they're going to talk to each other. And if someone doesn't like you and they happen to be in that one particular place of power, they can bite you.
yeah, no, that you're dead on about it. I mean, people talk in our industry, and you're only especially if you've worked in a couple different markets. Like we both have worked in several. I've worked
But
in
my
4 as
wife
well.
says, she tells me all the time, you guys, your industry, you're way worse than a soap opera. You guys talk all the time about everything that's going on, and you know, and I'm like, yeah, but you know, we just kind of like we're open books, right? That might be why too.
Yeah, I think that you work in a bunch of different markets, and I think the other thing is there's a lot of crossover now.
Yeah.
Think about it. You're on Buffalo Kickoff Live with me. I go on the radio through you. You go on the radio with him. He was doing stuff for Spectrum. You're on with Buffalo Kickoff Live. I've done stuff on your podcast. You guys, you know what I mean? We've all kind of, you know, you do stuff with Matt Beauvais. You know, you guys all do, we all kind of.
That's right.
You know, so you have to have good relationships with each other because we're all looking to make our product better. It's not that, look, in my, you know, in the TV realm of things, people who watch Channel 4 are going to watch Channel 4. People who watch Channel 7 are probably going to watch, like, people who are watching the newscast. The difference is when you have the pregame show, that's what sets you apart a little bit. So then who can you add? Who can help contribute? You know, who brings a different experience level? Not only that, but just different, you know, takes and different stuff. So yeah, I think that's another reason why the relationships have changed and evolved over the years is before there weren't the pregame shows and there weren't the podcasts and there weren't all the different things that were going on where you kind of need each other to survive in the eco.
And it's been a building block. I mean, there's a guy that Heather and Josh work with that we went at it. It's actually like a hilarious story. I'm not going to get into it, but like we were going at it on the floor of the MAC tournament, not like physically, but we were yelling at each other. And now we'll go out and have beers and dinner, and like we're all part of like the group and the family. But that was years and years ago, and we all have personalities. We all think
it's stressful. Our job is stressful too. Not like our job is stressful.
Anytime I've seen this happen, it usually just dissolves. It's fine. It resolves itself.
And we all think we're right.
That's right. That's what we do.
Because I am.
Yeah.
How much is the closeness of the media core a result of the burgeoning out of the press room media group? That it feels like those two groups are more at odds.
Who are we talking about here?
Like fan-driven media.
Oh.
Like I feel like those two groups are much more at odds than anything happening internally with the traditional media.
Probably right, but we also don't. Yeah, that's right. We don't see them every day. The people who do the blogosphere and these new things that are popping up all the time, these shows and everything, they're not doing what we're doing, and we don't develop those relationships with them. And quite frankly, we can see them as a threat. I mean, that can happen. Look, I was that person once. I was living in Florida when my name got on the national scene, and I broke the story that Terrell Owens was signing with the Buffalo Bills. That's how people know me. That I was the guy that broke the T.O. story. I was some guy doing a show in his basement back then. Really wasn't. It was one of these things, but now this is all like what it is now, right? So I try to respect enough what those people are trying to do because they're just like I was at some point, you know? So I agree with you, though. We do have a little bit of that, but there's a lot of just misunderstanding, which actually was a question I was going to ask you guys about, like some of the things like that people don't know about this industry. We'll save that for next time we talk, but I agree with that. Let me say this about, John, you said, you know, why would, if someone doesn't like you, who cares? See, like that's my downfall. I care. I care if someone doesn't like me in the media room. Like, what did I do? Like, I'm a good person. I try to treat people right. I'm a pleaser.
Yeah. No, you do. You wear that on your sleeve. Like,
right.
Like, we all know Sal well. Sal definitely is. If there's a room of 50 people and 49 of them like Sal, Sal's concerned with the one person.
Correct.
And why.
And it might be a character flaw.
No,
and I don't know
that it's a flaw. I just think we're all built a little different.
You know?
Yeah, I just don't care.
Right.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I actually enjoy confrontations. I enjoy.
See, I don't know if I enjoy confrontations. I just don't.
I like it, so I'm here for it. If someone wants to go down that road, buckle up, man, because I enjoy it. I thrive.
That's why he goes
I
to the
feel
gym
like
every day.
I thrive in those
I
situations.
don't think I've had a single
but
inter-media confrontation since I've been here, have I? I'm trying to think
No,
of one.
I don't think
I've
so.
had a
I mean,
I don't know, but there's a difference between like there's a lot of fakeness too, though, right? That
Well,
goes on.
right.
I'm not calling you that. I'm saying
Yeah, you
or
are.
any of us, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like there's people can be fake nice to you. Like I understand also I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I get that. Like I'm not for everyone. I'm whatever the way I am. But same thing goes if you can go through every one of the media seats that can be said, that person's not, or that person's not, or that person's not. So a lot of times some of the relationships that are built, I feel, are a little bit kind of just I don't know if even fake is not authentic. They're not authentic. They're just people trying to get by, right? I try to build like authentic relationships, and that's why it bothers me if someone doesn't like me. I guess that's the point of it. I don't know.
I think there's been a lot of changeover in the 10 years since you've been the sideline guy, 10 years since
Yes.
I've been there. You guys have kind of been part of that. I just feel like there was a lot of an old guard,
Yeah.
and they were the ones who'd been there. And I'm not saying that they were mean. There's actually, I've been friends with some of them, but I think it's kind of shaken up the room a little bit to where it's allowed it to kind of come together. I know when Heather and I bought our house, we invited a lot of the media people over as friends, and when we have parties, we do it. Some of them are not people that we would have ever thought we'd invite, and I feel like even the gesture or doing things like that has helped build a relationship amongst everybody. And not that we're some, great conduit or anything like that. We were just doing it because we wanted to be nice and things like that. And our relationships with other people have grown as well. You don't have to like everyone. To me, the biggest thing is, and this goes for if you're in that room or outside of the room and cover the team, is just understand everybody has a job and let them do the job that they have to do. And it would probably benefit everyone to have at least some idea of what their job responsibility is, because I feel like certain people, they look down at, oh, you do that, or you do that, or you do that. And that's what kind of causes some of the friction, where it's like, listen, your job responsibility for your publication requires you to do this. For TV, you have to do 5 little hits a day on little topics here. You have to talk on the radio and try not to say the same thing 3 times a day and things like that. So we all have to do things differently. And if there's just a good understanding or acceptance of that, not even understanding, I think everyone can kind of operate in that sphere. And that I throw the blogs and things like that. Just understand everybody's, not role, but what they're trying to do, and just accept it rather than trying to gain the upper hand or be critical.
Yeah, I think what I've had to personally realize is that, like, I just turned 50 this year, and, like, I just can't as well relate maybe to some people who are a little bit maybe younger in doing this. And then there's the bridge to the people who have been doing it for a long time, 20 years more than I have, I guess. So, hey, listen, this has been amazing. I think there's a lot more meat on the bone that we can talk about, guys. I appreciate it, man. Just thank you so much. Thank you. All right, give me a little fist pump.
Long distance.
All right, thank you so much. Josh Reed, WIVB TV, Channel 4. John Scott, Spectrum News 1. Matt Parrino, Syracuse.com. Thanks for tuning in and watching Sal's house. Oh, by the way, it's also my wife's house, Yana's house. Sal's house, Yana's house.
No. Yana's house.
Yana's house.
Sal's
It's
house.
called Sal's house. It is Yana's house. No, thank you. She's the one allowing me and allowing us to do this. And I can't wait to do more for everybody. We got so much more planned. So thank you for coming aboard. Thank you, Yana, for allowing me to invade the living room today. And she left with Max, and it's all good. So we'll do it again.